On my 18th birthday, instead of cake and presents, my adoptive parents handed me a garbage bag with my clothes and told me the truth that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. "We only adopted you for the government money," my mother said, calculator in hand, fingers moving across the keys like she was tallying up 18 years of profits. $1,500 a month, Colton. You've been a reliable income stream, but now that you're 18, the checks stop coming. My name is Colton Reed, or at least that's what I've been called for 18 years. The woman speaking to me is Beverly Reed, the only mother I've ever known. She's 52, works as a bank teller, and apparently views me as a financial investment that just matured. Sitting next to her, avoiding eye contact like he always does during confrontations, is Harold Reed, my adoptive father. He manages inventory at a hardware store and has taught me everything I know about fixing engines, though I'm starting to realize those lessons were probably just to keep me busy, not because he cared. "You're joking," I said, my voice barely working. "This is March 15th, my birthday. You're seriously telling me this on my birthday?" Harold shifted in his chair, the same wooden chair where he'd sat for 18 years of silent dinners. "The adoption subsidies end when you turn 18. That was always the deal." "The deal?" I felt my legs go weak. "I'm your son. I'm not a deal." Beverly looked up from her calculator for the first time. Her gray eyes were as cold as they'd always been, but now I understood why. "No, Colton. You were a ward of the state that we agreed to house in exchange for compensation. We fulfilled our contractual obligations. Food, shelter, education. The contract is now complete." She stood up, walked to the corner of the kitchen where a black garbage bag sat like a tumor against the white wall. "Your belongings are in here, personal items only. Anything we purchased remains our property." I watched her hands, the same hands that had packed my school lunches, though now I realized she'd only packed the minimum required by state guidelines. The same hands that had signed my report cards, though she'd never asked about my grades beyond whether I was passing. The same hands that had never, not once in 18 years, reached out to comfort me when I was scared or sick or sad. "You have until noon to vacate," Beverly continued, returning to her seat. "That gives you 2 hours and 13 minutes to make arrangements." Harold finally spoke up, his voice barely above a whisper. "Beverly, maybe we could give him a few days to figure things out." She turned to him with the look that had shut him down 1,000 times before. "The mortgage payment is due tomorrow, Harold. We need to list the room on Craigslist this afternoon. Someone already called about renting it." "You're renting out my room?" The reality was crashing down in waves. "You already have someone lined up?" "It's not your room," Beverly corrected. "It never was. You were a long-term guest whose stay has ended." I stood there in the kitchen where I'd eaten 18 years of meals, staring at these two people who I'd called Mom and Dad, who I'd made Father's Day cards for in elementary school, who I'd tried so hard to make proud. Harold wouldn't look at me. Beverly went back to her calculator, already moving on to other numbers, other calculations, as if dismissing an 18-year investment was just another Tuesday morning transaction. "I don't have anywhere to go," I said, hating how small my voice sounded. "I have $47 in my wallet. Where am I supposed to go?" Beverly pulled out a pamphlet from her perfectly organized folder. Of course she had a folder. Of course she'd prepared for this like a business presentation. "There's a shelter downtown. They accept adults 18 and older. The address is highlighted." A homeless shelter. The woman who had raised me since I was 3 months old was handing me directions to a homeless shelter like she was giving me a recipe for lasagna. "Please," I said, and I would hate myself for begging later, but in that moment I was desperate. "Just give me a week, let me figure something out, I'll pay rent." "With what money?" Beverly asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer. "Your part-time job at that garage. 30 hours a week at minimum wage won't cover market-rate rent." She was right, of course. She was always right about the numbers. I'd been saving for community college, had managed to put away $800 over 2 years. It wouldn't even cover a security deposit anywhere. Harold stood up abruptly, unable to sit with his guilt any longer. "I'm going to work," he mumbled, grabbing his keys off the hook by the door. He paused for just a moment, his hand on the doorknob. "Good luck, Colton." And then he was gone, the sound of his truck starting in the driveway, leaving me alone with Beverly and her calculator and my garbage bag of belongings. "The clock is ticking," Beverly said without looking up. "I have errands to run at 11:30, and I'll be locking the house when I leave." I walked over to the garbage bag, lifted it. It weighed almost nothing. 18 years, and everything I owned fit in a single garbage bag. I looked inside, my clothes, a few books, my toothbrush, the watch my boss at the garage had given me for Christmas. Nothing from Beverly or Harold, no family photos, no keepsakes, no evidence I had ever been part of this family at all. "Was I ever anything to you?" I asked, not really expecting an answer, but needing to ask anyway. "In 18 years, was there ever a moment where you felt something? Anything?" Beverly finally looked at me, really looked at me, and for just a second I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. But then she glanced at her watch, the same efficient gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. "You were a responsibility that we managed successfully. We never hit you, never starved you, never violated the terms of our agreement with the state. That should be enough." But it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. And as I stood there holding everything I owned in a garbage bag, about to walk out into a world that suddenly had no place for me, I realized that some people are capable of raising a child for 18 years without ever actually seeing them as anything more than a monthly check. "Goodbye, Beverly," I said, not calling her mom for the first time in my life. She was already back to her numbers, adding up something else, calculating some other transaction in her neat, orderly life that would continue exactly as planned, now that the inconvenience of raising someone else's child was finally over. Growing up in the Reed household in suburban Dallas wasn't perfect, but I thought it was normal. Every family had its quirks, right? That's what I told myself when Beverly would introduce me at her bank functions as Colton, our adopted son, always emphasizing that word, adopted, like she was clarifying I was a rescue dog from the pound. Harold would just nod along, sipping his watered-down beer, never correcting her, never jumping in to say our son was enough. They adopted me when I was 3 months old. I don't know much about the circumstances, just that I was a ward of the state, and they were approved foster-to-adopt parents. Beverly kept the paperwork in a locked filing cabinet in their bedroom. I'd seen her open it twice in 18 years, both times quickly closing it when I walked in, like I'd caught her counting money she didn't want me to know about. Our house was modest but clean, a 3-bedroom ranch with beige walls and beige carpet and beige everything. Beverly believed color was an unnecessary expense. "Neutral tones don't go out of style," she'd say, the same way she'd say, "generic brands have the same ingredients," or "there's no point heating the whole house when sweaters exist." Every decision was filtered through the lens of maximum efficiency, minimum cost. Harold taught me practical things, though I realize now it was probably just to keep me occupied. He showed me how to change oil, rotate tires, fix a leaky faucet, patch drywall. "Man needs to know how to fix things," he'd say, handing me a wrench, but he never let me work on his prized possession, a 1969 Mustang he kept under a cover in the garage. "That's not for kids," he'd say, even when I turned 17 and was hardly a kid anymore. I understand now that I was never going to be old enough because I was never really his. The locked room in our basement should have been my first clue. They said it was just storage, but sometimes I'd hear Beverly down there on the phone, her voice muffled but clearly discussing numbers, always numbers. When I was younger, I thought maybe she worked from home sometimes. Now, I wonder if she was talking to the social workers, confirming deposits, discussing my case. School was my escape. Not that I was particularly popular or smart, just average at everything. Invisible in the best way. Teachers liked me because I didn't cause trouble. Other kids tolerated me because I could fix their cars in the school parking lot for cheap. I had friends, sort of, the kind you eat lunch with but never invite home. How could I? Our house felt like a museum where someone accidentally lived, everything in its place, no warmth anywhere. I started working at Jennings Auto Repair when I turned 16. Old man Jennings was 70-something, covered in tattoos from his Navy days, and had forgotten more about engines than most people ever learn. He paid me under the table at first, then officially when I turned 17. "You got good hands, kid," he'd tell me. "Steady, patient, that's rare these days." The money went straight into my savings account, minus what Beverly charged me for incidentals once I started working. $50 a month for increased utility usage, $30 for wear and tear on the household, $25 for administrative overhead, which I think meant the time she spent driving me to work before I got my license. She had an itemized list. Of course she did. I bought my own clothes from Goodwill, paid for my own school supplies, covered my own phone bill with a prepaid plan. Beverly said it built character. Harold said nothing, which was his primary contribution to most conversations. The 3 photos I mentioned earlier were all formal, staged. One from when I was 5, dressed in a suit for Beverly's cousin's wedding. One from middle school graduation because the school required it. One from my 16th birthday at DMV when I got my license. Beverly kept them in a drawer, not displayed anywhere. The walls had art from Home Goods, generic prints of flowers and landscapes. Nothing personal, nothing that suggested a family lived here. Dinner was always at 6 sharp. Beverly would cook meals that could be stretched across multiple days. Sunday's roast became Monday's sandwiches, Tuesday's soup, Wednesday's casserole. She had it down to a science exactly how many calories per dollar, exactly how much nutrition per penny. We ate in relative silence, the news playing in the background. Harold occasionally grunting agreement with some political opinion, Beverly cutting her food into identical, measured bites. I tried once, when I was about 14, to ask about my biological parents. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "They couldn't care for you," Beverly said curtly. "We stepped up when others wouldn't, that's all you need to know." Harold had added, quietly, "Best not to dig into the past, son." It was one of the few times he called me son without it sounding like he was reading from a script. Birthdays were acknowledged but not celebrated. A card, usually, generic. "Happy birthday," printed inside, signed Beverly and Harold Reed. Christmas was similar. Practical gifts only. Socks, school supplies. One year, a graphing calculator because it was required for class. The tree came down December 26th, no matter what. "No point paying electric for lights we're not using," Beverly would say. I see it all differently now, every memory tainted with the truth. The way Beverly kept meticulous records of every penny spent on me. The way Harold always introduced me as the boy to his coworkers. The way they never came to parent-teacher conferences unless the state required it. The way they'd have hushed conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Conversations I now know were probably about their monthly windfall. But here's the thing about growing up without love. You don't know it's missing until someone shows you what you should have had. I thought all families were transactional. I thought all parents kept spreadsheets. I thought everyone's childhood home felt like a temporary arrangement that could end at any moment. I was right about that last part, at least. "Sit down, Colton," Beverly said that morning, not looking up from her calculator. The kitchen table was covered in documents, spreadsheets, and bank statements. "Now that you're 18, the checks stop coming." My stomach dropped like I'd missed the last step on a staircase. "What checks?" Harold shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the wood creaking under his weight. He was wearing his work uniform, probably eager to escape to the hardware store where he could hide behind inventory sheets and customer service. The adoption subsidy checks. $1,500 a month for 18 years. That's why we took you in. The words hit me like physical blows. I actually felt each one land in my chest, my stomach, my throat. $1,500 monthly for 18 years. I was doing the math even as my world collapsed. $324,000. That's what I had been worth to them. Beverly continued, her voice as emotionless as if she were reading a grocery list. We provided what the state required: food, shelter, education. The contract is complete. You need to leave by noon. You're joking, I said, my voice cracking like I was 13 again. This is some sick birthday prank. Any second now you're going to laugh and bring out a cake, right? The garbage bag has your belongings, Beverly replied, pointing with her pen. Leave the key on the counter. The garage door opener, too. And the house key hidden under the fake rock. I know you made a copy. She knew about the spare key, of course she did. Beverly knew about everything that might cost her money or compromise her control. I don't understand, I said, though I was starting to. The puzzle pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I didn't want to see. You raised me. I call you Mom and Dad. How can you just kick me out? You're legally an adult, Beverly said, finally looking up from her calculations. We have no further obligation to house you. In fact, keeping you here could complicate our taxes. We've been claiming you as a dependent, but now that the subsidy has ended, you're a liability rather than an asset. A liability, an asset. I was being discussed like a car that had depreciated past its useful value. Please, I said. And I actually got on my knees in that kitchen, right there on the linoleum floor that I'd mopped every Saturday for 18 years. I'll get a full-time job, I'll pay rent, I'll buy my own food, just give me a month to figure things out. Harold looked away, studying the wall like he'd never seen it before. Beverly just pointed at the clock. It's 9:47. You have until noon. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stayed on my knees for another 30 seconds, maybe a minute, waiting for something. Anything. A crack in their resolve. But Beverly went back to her calculator and Harold stood up to refill his coffee, stepping around me like I was a piece of furniture. When I finally stood up, my legs were shaking. 18 years, I said. 18 years of calling you my parents. Doesn't that mean anything? You were well cared for, Beverly said. Fed 3 meals a day, clothed appropriately, educated through the public school system, medical and dental care as required by state guidelines. You received everything you were entitled to. What about love? The question came out as barely a whisper. Beverly's fingers paused on the calculator keys for just a moment. Love doesn't pay mortgages, Colton. I went to my room, or what had been my room for 18 years. The walls were bare because Beverly didn't believe in posters or personal decoration. The furniture was basic, functional, probably bought in bulk from some state-approved supplier. I opened the closet and found my clothes already sorted into 2 piles. Things I'd bought myself, which went into the garbage bag, and things they'd bought, which stayed. My laptop stayed because they'd purchased it for school. The alarm clock stayed because it came with the room. The baseball glove Harold bought me when I was 12 stayed, even though we'd never played catch, not even once. He'd bought it because the school required it for PE, nothing more. I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my reflection. Brown eyes, brown hair, average height, average build. I looked like nobody and everybody at once. Is that why it had been so easy for them? Because I was generic enough to blend into their beige life without disrupting the color scheme? Back in the kitchen, Beverly was on the phone. Yes, the room will be available this afternoon. $450 a month, utilities included. First month and security deposit required. She was already renting out my room. While I was still in the house, she was arranging for my replacement. Not another foster kid, though, a paying tenant, a real asset. Who were my biological parents? I asked suddenly. Beverly covered the phone. Does it matter? They gave you up. We're giving you up. Seems like consistency to me. You know who they were? The state provided basic medical history for insurance purposes. Nothing more was relevant to our arrangement. Our arrangement. That's what my childhood had been. An arrangement. Harold came back from the garage holding a $20 bill. He handed it to me without making eye contact. For food, he mumbled, until you get settled. $20. After $324,000, he was offering me $20. I wanted to tear it up, throw it in his face, maintain some dignity. But I took it. Pride doesn't mean much when you're about to be homeless. Time's up, Beverly announced at exactly noon. She stood by the door, holding it open. We have appointments this afternoon. I picked up the garbage bag, surprisingly light for containing an entire life. As I walked past her, I stopped. Did you ever, even for a moment, think of me as your son? She looked at me with those gray eyes that had never warmed, not once. I thought of you as my responsibility. I fulfilled that responsibility completely. The door closed behind me with a decisive click. I heard the deadbolt turn, then the chain lock, then nothing but the sound of suburban Dallas continuing its day, lawnmowers running, kids playing, families being families in ways I would never understand. I stood on the sidewalk, holding my garbage bag, $20 in my pocket, and nowhere to go. The shelter pamphlet Beverly had given me was already damp with sweat from my palm. The address was downtown, at least an hour's walk. My phone buzzed with a text. Beverly, you're no longer on our family plan. Service ends at midnight. Plan accordingly. Even my phone was on a timer. Everything about my existence in their life had been scheduled, budgeted, and was now being efficiently terminated. I started walking. Last Tuesday, June 20th, everything changed. I was sitting outside the Dallas Public Library, my usual spot on the concrete steps where the security cameras didn't reach, and the security guards didn't bother you if you looked clean enough. 3 months of homeless shelter living had taught me the importance of appearances. Shower every day, even if the water's cold. Shave with the disposable razors from the shelter kit. Keep your clothes clean, even if you have to wash them in bathroom sinks. A man in a gray suit approached, and my body tensed automatically. You develop that instinct quick in the shelters. Gray suits usually meant police detectives or social workers, neither of which brought good news. But this man moved differently, purposefully, like he'd been looking for something specific and had just found it. Colton Reed? He asked, pulling out a leather wallet. My first instinct was to run. 3 months on the streets taught you that when someone in a suit knows your name, it's rarely good. But I was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of being nobody from nowhere. Depends who's asking. My name is Vincent Morales. I'm a private investigator. He handed me a business card, expensive cardstock, embossed letters. Real. I've been searching for you for 3 months. Your biological father hired me to find you years ago, but your adoption records were sealed. When you turned 18 and applied for jobs using your social security number, I finally got a hit. The words, biological father, sent electricity through my entire body. My biological father? Vincent sat down on the steps beside me, not caring about his expensive suit on the dirty concrete. That small gesture of humanity meant more than he probably knew. Theodore Brennan. He's been looking for you since the day he signed the adoption papers. Been looking? I caught the past tense. Was? Why isn't he here? Vincent's expression softened, the kind of look people get when they're about to deliver news that will shatter you. I'm sorry to tell you this way, but he passed away last week. Heart attack at his desk. He was still searching for you when it happened. The words didn't make sense. I'd spent 3 months imagining scenarios where someone would come looking for me, where someone would care that I existed. Now someone had, and he was already gone. Vincent pulled out a tablet, swiping to a photo. This is him, Theodore Brennan. I stared at the screen and saw my own face, aged 30 years. Same brown eyes, same jawline, same slight crook in the nose, but where my eyes looked tired and defeated, his looked determined, driven. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than Beverly and Harold's monthly mortgage, standing in front of a glass building with Brennan Oil Industries etched across the entrance. "Oil?" I said, remembering Old Man Jennings' joke about me having oil in my blood. "CEO and founder," Vincent confirmed. "Started with one oil rig 20 years ago, built it into an empire. He never married, never had other children. Said he couldn't, not until he found you." "Why did he give me up?" The question burned coming out. Vincent showed me another photo, this one older, grainier. A young man, barely out of his teens, holding a baby. "He was 22 when you were born. Your mother, Emily Colton, died in childbirth. Complications no one saw coming. Theodore's parents convinced him he couldn't raise a baby alone, that you'd be better off with a stable, two-parent family. He signed the papers and regretted it within a week." "A week?" I felt anger rising. "He regretted it after a week, and it took him 18 years to find me. He tried to reverse the adoption immediately, but you'd already been placed with the Reeds. The records were sealed. He spent 18 years and millions of dollars trying to break through the legal walls. Private investigators, lawyers, even lobbyists trying to change adoption law in Texas. He hired me 5 years ago, his 14th private investigator." Vincent pulled out a folder, thick with documents. 3 years ago, I found you. Found the Reeds. But when Theodore tried to make contact, they threatened legal action. Restraining orders, harassment charges. They knew he was looking for you, Colton. They knew, and they never told you. The rage that filled me was pure and white-hot. Beverly and Harold had known. Someone had wanted me, someone had been desperately searching for me, and they'd hidden it to keep collecting their checks. "He was supposed to be here," Vincent continued. "The plan was to approach you the day you turned 18, when the Reeds no longer had legal authority. But the heart attack happened March 13th, 2 days before your birthday." March 13th. While I was stocking shelves at the auto shop, planning what I might say to Beverly and Harold at my birthday dinner, my father was dying at his desk, still trying to find me. "There's more," Vincent said, standing up. "We need to go to the lawyer's office. There are documents you need to see, decisions you need to make." "Decisions?" I laughed, but it came out bitter. "I live in a homeless shelter. I own one pair of shoes. What decisions could I possibly need to make?" Vincent looked at me with something like sympathy. "Theodore Brennan left everything to you. Every penny, every asset, every share of stock. You're about to become one of the wealthiest people in Texas." I stood there on those library steps where I'd spent so many afternoons filling out job applications for minimum wage positions, being rejected from fast food restaurants for being overqualified because I'd graduated high school, and tried to process what he was saying. "I don't understand," I said. "He didn't know me. I could be anyone. I could be a terrible person." "You're his son," Vincent said simply. That was enough for him. He used to say, "I don't need to know him to love him. I've loved him since the day I lost him." The drive to the lawyer's office was surreal. Vincent's car smelled like leather and coffee, clean and expensive. The air conditioning worked perfectly. The radio played classical music softly. It was the opposite of every bus ride I'd taken to job interviews, hoping my deodorant would last, praying my clothes didn't smell like the shelter. "He talked about you constantly," Vincent said as we drove through parts of Dallas I'd never seen, glass towers and manicured lawns. Every meeting ended with an update on the search. Every success was measured by whether it brought him closer to finding you. The board of directors used to joke that Brennan Oil was really just an 18-year funding mechanism for finding Colton Reed. Did he know anything about me, about how I was living? He knew the Reeds were receiving adoption subsidies. It killed him, knowing they were profiting from keeping you. He tried to offer them money, 10 times what the state was paying, just to allow contact. They refused, said any contact would be detrimental to your well-being. Detrimental to my well-being. Beverly had used my well-being as a shield while calculating my worth down to the penny. The lawyer's office was on the 40th floor of a building I'd walked past 100 times but never entered. The elevator ride felt like ascending to a different world, one where people's shoes matched and their clothes fit properly, and their futures weren't determined by the whims of strangers. Ms. Chen, the lawyer, was waiting in a conference room with walls of windows overlooking Dallas. The city sprawled below us, and somewhere down there was the shelter where my cot was probably already assigned to someone else. "Mr. Reed," she said, and I almost corrected her, almost said that wasn't really my name. But what was? "Please, sit. We have a lot to discuss." Ms. Chen placed a sealed envelope on the conference table. Theodore's name written across it in shaky handwriting. "Your father wrote this the morning he died. He insisted it be given to you unopened, by your hands alone." My fingers trembled as I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter on personal stationery, and a small brass key with an address tag. The letter was 3 pages, covered in rushed handwriting, like he knew he was running out of time. "My son, if you're reading this, then I've failed to find you in time, but at least you've been found. Your mother died giving birth to you. Her name was Emily Colton, and she was the love of my life. You have her smile, though I suppose you wouldn't know that. I was 22, scared and weak. My parents convinced me that a single father, especially one as young and unprepared as I was, couldn't give you what you needed. They had already contacted an adoption agency, already found the perfect family, a stable couple who couldn't have children of their own. I signed the papers in a fog of grief and confusion. I regretted it within a week. I had to stop reading for a moment. The conference room had gone blurry. Miss Chen quietly pushed a box of tissues across the table. By then, you were gone. Sealed behind legal walls I spent 18 years trying to break down. The Reeds had you, and the state of Texas considered the matter closed. I tried everything. Legal challenges, private investigators, even bribing courthouse clerks, which cost me a fortune in legal fees when I got caught but was worth the attempt. The key opens a vault at the address below. Inside is everything I've gathered while searching for you. Every birthday gift I bought but couldn't give, every letter I wrote but couldn't send, and the truth about why finding you became my obsession. The letter continued. Your mother's name was Colton, her maiden name. I named the company's newest oil field after you, the Colton Reserve, discovered the day you would have turned 16. It's the most productive field we own. I built an empire hoping that one day it would be loud, enough for you to hear me calling for you. Every contract I signed, every deal I made, I did it thinking maybe this would be the one that generated enough money to break through to you. I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to keep you. I'm sorry I wasn't fast enough to find you, but I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. The fortune I'm leaving you isn't an inheritance, it's 18 years of apologies in the only language I had left. Vincent drove me to the vault's address, an unmarked building in Houston's industrial district. It looked like nothing from the outside, just another warehouse. But inside, past 3 layers of security, was a room that took my breath away. The walls were covered floor to ceiling with evidence of his search. Private investigator reports, thousands of them. Age progression photos showing what I might look like at 5, 10, 15. Every Colton Reed in America had been investigated. There were newspaper clippings from my high school, my honor roll announcement, my name in tiny print, circled in red ink with, "Is this him?" written in the margin. He'd been so close, so many times. The center of the room held 18 years of birthday presents, each wrapped and labeled. A toy fire truck for age 4 with a note, "Every boy should have a truck." A baseball glove for age 9. I would have taught you to catch. A set of car keys for 16. Your first car, a Mustang, just like the one your mother loved. The car was apparently still in storage, waiting, but it was the desk that broke me. Hundreds of letters, organized by date. I picked one at random from age 13. Colton, you're 13 today. I wonder if you like science. I loved chemistry at your age, before I discovered petroleum engineering. I hope someone is teaching you to throw a curveball. I hope someone tells you they're proud of you. I am, even from afar. I got your school photo today, bought from a company that sells yearbook pictures online. You look serious, thoughtful. Your mother had that same expression when she was concentrating. I carry your photo everywhere. The board thinks I'm insane, pulling out a school photo of a boy I've never met during million-dollar negotiations. But you ground me, remind me why I'm building this. All of this is for you. Vincent stood quietly by the door as I went through letter after letter, year after year of a father's love documented in ink and paper. Then I found the folder that changed everything. Failed adoption recovery. Reed family. Inside were documents, legal correspondence, emails. Theodore had found me 3 years ago. He'd tried to make contact, sent letters, even showed up at the house once. Beverly and Harold had responded with lawyers, threatened harassment charges, filed for a restraining order. There were photos of my house, of me walking to school, getting into Harold's truck, working at the garage. My father had been watching from a distance, legally barred from approaching. One email from Beverly to Theodore's lawyer was highlighted. Mr. Brennan's contact attempts are disruptive to our family structure. Colton is thriving in our care and does not need the confusion of a biological parent's interference. Any further attempts at contact will result in criminal charges. The monthly subsidies we receive from the state are irrelevant to this matter and should not be construed as motivation for maintaining custody. She'd known. She'd known everything and kept it from me to keep her monthly checks coming. At the bottom of the folder was a USB drive labeled Final Message. Vincent pulled out a laptop and we plugged it in. Theodore's face appeared on screen, dated a week before his death. He looked exhausted, but determined. Colton, tomorrow I'm flying to Dallas. Vincent finally confirmed you'll be 18 and free from the Reed's control. After 18 years, I'm finally going to meet my son. I've practiced what to say 1,000 times, but I know I'll just cry. I hope you can forgive a young man's cowardice. I hope we can build something from the time we have left. I bought a restaurant reservation for your birthday dinner. Somewhere nice, somewhere that serves that chocolate cake everyone seems to like on birthdays. I never got to see you blow out candles, make wishes. I have 18 years of wishes saved up. All of them are just variations of the same thing. Bring my boy home. I love you, son. I'm coming for you. This time, nothing will stop me. The timestamp showed 11:47 p.m., March 12th. He died at his desk 6 hours later, planning our reunion. Vincent finally spoke. The paramedics said he was holding a plane ticket to Dallas and your photo when they found him. I sat in that vault, surrounded by 18 years of love I never received, gifts I never opened, letters I never read, and felt the full weight of what had been stolen from me. Not just by Beverly and Harold, but by fate, by timing, by a heart that gave out 2 days too soon. There's one more thing, Miss Chen said, pulling out a tablet. The estate value, Brennan Oil Industries, valued at $91 million. 4 mansions across Texas, each fully paid. A private island off the Gulf Coast he bought the year you turned 10, named it Colton Island. Various investments and liquid assets totaling another $30 million. It's all yours, Mr. Brennan. Brennan. She'd called me Mr. Brennan. For the first time in my life, I had a name that someone had wanted me to have. I'm 19 now, CEO of an oil company I'm still learning to run. The board members who watched Theodore search for me for 18 years have become my teachers, sharing stories about my father I'll never get to make myself. They tell me about his determination, how he'd fly to random states on weekends following leads that I might be there, how he kept a desk drawer full of my school photos, bought from public record websites, how every major business decision was followed by the question, "Will this help me find my son?" The mansions felt wrong at first, too big, too empty, filled with the ghost of a man I never met but who loved me more than anyone ever had. I kept one, the house where Theodore lived, leaving his bedroom untouched. His cologne still sits on the dresser. His reading glasses remain on the nightstand, marking his place in a book about adoption law reform he'll never finish. Sometimes I sit in his study, surrounded by his handwritten notes about me, and talk to him like he's there. I tell him about my day, about the company, about the life he made possible. The other 3 mansions have been transformed. They're transitional housing now for aged-out foster kids and homeless youth. The Dallas shelter where I spent 3 months eating expired sandwiches and sleeping on a cot that smelled like disinfectant now receives a monthly donation that ensures no one goes hungry or cold. The director asked me once why I don't want my name on anything. I told her the truth. It's not charity when you've been there. It's just paying back a debt to the universe. Vincent still works for me, but his job has changed. Now he helps me find other lost kids, other biological parents searching for children they lost to the system. We've reunited 12 families so far. Last month, we found a 17-year-old whose biological mother had been searching for 15 years. I paid for their reunion dinner and watched from across the restaurant as they cried over untouched pasta. That's what Theodore never got. That moment. That chance to cry over birthday cake while making up for lost time. I visited Beverly and Harold once. Just once. They'd moved to a smaller apartment on the wrong side of Dallas, the kind with bars on the windows and a broken security gate. Harold was working double shifts at the hardware store. Beverly had taken a second job doing bookkeeping at night. Without my monthly subsidy, their carefully calculated life had fallen apart. "We gave you what you needed," Beverly said when she opened the door, not inviting me in, her face showing no surprise at seeing me. "No," I replied, standing in their doorway, wearing a suit that cost more than their monthly rent. "You gave me what the state paid you to give, but Theodore, who never met me, gave me everything. He gave me love that didn't require payment." Harold appeared behind her, looking older, more tired. "Colton, we heard about your inheritance. If you could see your way to helping us out, we did raise you for 18 years. The audacity of it should have made me angry. Instead, I felt nothing but pity. You raised me for $324,000 in subsidies. By my calculation, you've been paid in full." I left them there, in their calculated poverty, and never looked back. The private island remains mostly untouched, exactly as Theodore left it. He'd built a small house there, filled it with things he thought I might like. Fishing gear, though he didn't know if I fished. Sports equipment for every possible sport. Books on every subject. He was preparing for any version of me, ready to love whoever I turned out to be. I go there when the weight of running his company feels too heavy, when I miss the father I never met. I sit on the dock he built and fish with the rod he bought me, catching nothing, just existing in a space he created for us to share. Old Man Jennings was right all those years ago. I did have oil in my blood, literally in my DNA, a genetic inheritance from a father who turned black gold into an empire while searching for his lost son. But more than that, I have his determination, his refusal to give up. Every signature I sign as CEO, I sign as Colton Brennan, honoring the man who never stopped looking for me. The Theodore Brennan Foster Foundation has placed 40 kids with screened families this year. Real families who want children, not checks. We pay for everything, but the money goes to trust funds for the kids, not the parents. I interview every family personally. I know what questions to ask, what lies to look for. I know the difference between a house and a home, between caregivers and parents, between obligation and love. Last week, I got a letter from one of the kids we placed, a 7-year-old named Marcus. He wrote in crayon, "Thank you for my family. They read me stories every night. They say, 'I love you even when I'm not good.' They put my pictures on the wall." That letter sits on my desk next to Theodore's final note to me. 2 generations of love, one lost, one found. The money doesn't erase 3 months of cold showers in shelters or 18 years of emotional starvation. It doesn't bring back the father who loved me from a distance, who died 48 hours before he could hold me for the first time since I was 3 months old. But it does mean I can ensure no child experiences what I did. It means Theodore's love, 18 years in the making, continues to ripple outward, finding lost children, building real families, creating the connections that Beverly and Harold proved can't be bought. Because that's what love looks like. Not a monthly subsidy or a calculated exchange, not a contract fulfilled or an obligation met. Love looks like a man spending 18 years and millions of dollars just to say 3 words he never got to speak. Welcome home, son. Love looks like hundreds of unopened birthday presents waiting in a vault. Like letters written to a ghost. Like a private investigator hired to watch from a distance because the law won't let you come closer. Like building an empire as a beacon, hoping your lost child might see the light and find their way home. Theodore Brennan died believing he'd failed. He hadn't. He'd spent 18 years teaching me what it means to love someone unconditionally, to never give up, to build something beautiful from loss and longing. He taught me that real parents aren't the ones who keep you for the checks, but the ones who would spend everything, sacrifice everything, just to know you're okay. I keep his final video on my phone, watch it when I need to remember what love looks like. My father, exhausted from 18 years of searching, holding a plane ticket to come find me, saying he loves me, saying he's coming, saying this time nothing will stop him. Death stopped him, but love didn't. Love found a way, love always does. Some nights I dream about that birthday dinner he planned, the chocolate cake he ordered, the candles I would have blown out. In my dreams, he makes it to Dallas. We sit across from each other at that restaurant, 2 strangers with the same face, the same eyes, the same oil in our blood. He tells me he's sorry. I tell him I understand. We both cry over chocolate cake that tastes like redemption. Then I wake up in his house, running his company, living his dream of bringing me home. And I realize the dream came true, just not the way either of us imagined. I'm home now, in a house built by love, in a life funded by determination, in a future he created while refusing to let me go. Beverly and Harold gave me up for free the moment the checks stopped coming. Theodore never gave up, not even when his heart stopped beating. That's the difference between a transaction and a transformation, between housing and home, between people who kept me and the one who loved me. Welcome home, son. I finally made it, Dad. I finally made it home. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your comments mean the world to me, and I read every single one. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful, true stories that remind us all that love always finds a way, even when it takes 18 years and comes from beyond the grave. Thank you for listening to my story.